campaign has been launched for the protection of children. This campaign followed by the revelation that children are suffering abuse at the hands of people closest to them, from parents to teachers and even neighbors. Equality Now is among organizations that collected the voices of children in such situations. These are children in 25 African countries. Let's just take a look at the gallery of the voices of children who have suffered such abuse. All right, so quite disturbing notes as you've seen there. And in studio now, I'm joined by Florence Machio. She's the coordinator of 25 conversations by an organization known as Equality Now. We also have Tabitha Saoyo, who is a lawyer with Kalin. And we want now to have a discussion around that. Ladies, quite disturbing information there. And I just want to hear from you, even before we get to the why you started this campaign, how has it been emotionally? Because I can imagine listening to kids, you know, talking about sexual abuse or violence. I'll start with you, Tabitha.
I am a human rights lawyer, and I have worked in a couple of organizations, including FIDA Kenya and Kelin right now. And these are some of the things that I've been encountering for the last 6 years in terms of the work that I have been doing. Partly, it's depressing, because you go back to your family. I do have a daughter myself, and I become very paranoid every time I go back home, because these are the things that I'm seeing out there, and I come back home and this is a true reflection of the society that we live in. So it's not just depressing, but it's also demoralizing, because you keep asking yourself, when you've done this for 6 years and nothing seems to change and the statistics are increasing, what is it that we're doing wrong? Is it that we're not talking about these things? Is it that we're not making enough noise? Or is it that, you know, nobody cares enough to think that our children should be heard?
Should be and protected.
And
you'd imagine that after all these years of, you know, such campaigns, because, you know, we've had quite a number of campaigns, you know, of this kind, you'd think that, you know, the situation would improve, but evidently from, you know, what we've played on the screens and the cards that I have right now, nothing seems to, like, change.
Equality Now is an advocacy organization, and we advocate on law and changing law and making sure that the law is in tandem with what governments have signed and ratified globally. And we focused on women's rights and girls' rights. So when we went out this time around to just have a conversation with kids, we hoped that, you know, we can give them some human rights tools to learn about their rights. But this is what they gave us back. And it really shocked us to the core. And we said, so then what can we do as an organization to make sure that we amplify these voices? Because it's not enough as an organization, we've had this. What else can we do? Hence now we called, you know, colleagues in human rights like Kelly and Tabitha here, and other organizations like FIDA, Femnet. Let's come together and let's see how best we can call state actors and ask them what are they doing, because we've said we are protecting children, but we are not.
We're not.
If these voices have anything to go by, we are not protecting our children. We felt it is important that we amplify these voices, and this platform is one of them, of amplifying the voices of the children.
All right, so you're saying that, you know, when you were going to the ground, you were going to, you know, the kids with information, but then they actually shocked you and they said, actually, before you give us the information you have, this is what we've been going through.
Actually, the conversation would start based on their questions. So we would tell them this is the law, this is what your right is as a child. If it's in Kenya, we talked about the Sexual Offences Act, we talked about FGM, we talked about the Children's Act. So we felt, you know, the children will be informed and we'll go home happy. We've instilled some human rights seeds in them. But then, so we say, okay, now ask questions. So we give them cards. Please write down your question and write your age.
And this is a shock you
And
got.
this is what we got. You know, the card comes to you in front. You know, they are seated in a hall or in a classroom, and then you receive the cards back. So you're thinking you'll have boyfriend issues to deal with, period issues.
Or exams and
but
grades.
But even the period issue, you're dealing with it on violations, because then somebody tells you, why is it that our parents tell us that we start fending for ourselves when we start having periods?
Yeah.
What do they mean?
Yeah.
No, so if you tell your 12-year-old to fend for herself, and you are putting her on a boda boda or an Uber by herself, what are you trying to tell this child?
Telling her?
So this really shocked us to the core. And like you said, the first question, what does this do to us? Like Tabitha, I'm a parent of 2 boys. So now what I've told them, if you're playing, make sure mommy can see you, and you can see where mommy is, and I can see where you are, because I have seen how rotten the society is.
And it's not just against girls, it's also
also against boys. Yes, I'm a mother of 2 boys, so I know it is not just girls.
All right.
Yes.
So I want us to just take a look at, some cards here. I mean, and it's just devastating, even as a mom, just reading this, and it's really heart-wrenching. And I'll start with this one here. It says, I was raped before coming to school and did not report because I'm afraid. My uncle always assaults me, and I'm afraid to say. And this is coming from a girl who's just 15 years. So so there you go. There you go on your screen. So that's just the card that I've just read. I was raped before coming to school and did not report because I'm afraid. My uncle always assaults me and I'm afraid to say. And Tabitha, this is something that is always so, we hear it so much that, the people actually who abuse kids are the closest to them. So this is an uncle. So what happens? What do you tell such a child who does not know what to do? Because the uncle, it's like a father figure, yet this happens.
Betty, you're asking me a question that I just asked last week to a child who gave her testimony, a 17-year-old girl who was at the National Dialogue. And she told us that she has been spending a better part of her life being sexually violated by a stepfather who she stays with. And every time she tries telling the mom that, look, this gentleman, he may not be my biological father, but he has taken me in and he's sexually assaulting me. And the mom keeps telling her, just persevere.
Persevere.
We need to eat. We need to eat. I don't have anywhere else to take you. Your father abandoned us, and therefore this is the only person who has taken up the responsibility of raising you. And therefore, if you persevere just a little, your brothers and myself and you will get fed. So what do I tell this child?
And how many years?
The first sexual encounters when she was 5 years old.
5.
He consistently defiled this child from when she was 5 until she was about 10 years old. Now, this child reported to the guy's brother, thinking that the guy's brother would help her, and he also defiled her. So she was consistently defiled and threatened. Now, in terms of the law, we have a beautiful set of laws, Betty. We have the Sexual Offences Act, we have the Children's Act, we have the FGM Act, we have the most recent one being the Protection Against Domestic Violence Act. The laws may not be perfect, but they're sufficient in terms of protection. But what we see is lack of accountability and lack of implementation of those laws. And we also see some structural barriers towards breaking the silence, because this child fears. Number one, the person who is supposed to be the protector is telling her, as a mother, the person you look up to is telling you, persevere.
It's okay, persevere.
It's okay. Number two, there's also the self-blame, because this child is just 5 years old. What do they know? So they think that they deserve it. They think that they're actually helping their brothers by persevering it. This particular child thought that if my mom says it, I have to do it. And if mom says that I have to keep quiet and just act as if everything is okay, mommy says I do. She was just 5 years old.
Just 5 years. And then it goes back to, fine, you say that, we have sufficient laws. But even before we get to that level of laws, let's just go back to the home setup and the environment. And I was going to say, like, okay, maybe we should encourage our kids to talk to their parents. And then here, it's Tabitha telling me that actually the mom is saying, go on. So what happens to such kids? Do we have solid services where children can report such, such abuses meted against them?
We don't. That's just
Completely.
We don't.
Nothing.
We don't.
We've had the 112.
The numbers are there. Yes,
the numbers are there, but
once I call, I need direction to places that can protect me. Now, in the case of the child you've read, I remember this child very well because she came back and spoke to me after the conversation, where she even said, I currently have a discharge. This was the first time she's speaking about it. And the only reason she spoke about it is that we had a space that was safe for her to speak. Now, what we are saying is, if we have spaces that are safe, if this thing is going on at home, at least in school, there's an environment somewhere, a structural environment where somebody can come and say, this is going on, and therefore connected to the right actors. Now, it's not just that safe space. It also needs to have a shelter so that we remove this child from that space and take her somewhere else where she can get counseling continuous, because it's not a one-day affair, and continue with education, get the health care that she needs at that time. And those things are the ones we don't have. So if we start putting them in place, it also means that if this is happening at home, there's somewhere else I can go to speak. If I can't talk to mommy, I can talk to a child psychologist who is available in school. And I keep on saying we can afford it. We can afford a child psychologist in each public school, even if that child psychologist is given 5 schools. Monday, school A, Tuesday, school B. But then the children know that there's someone I can run to who is not just necessarily a teacher, because we know how teachers are sometimes. So if I can go to a person who is private, who can hear me out, even if I'm just talking about adolescent issues, even if I'm talking about boyfriend issues, even if I'm talking about periods, anything, or studies, how difficult they are, there's a listening ear that I can trust. These kids talk to us because they felt they could trust us. And they were speaking for the first time.
And so right now we don't have a center like that, that takes in children who have been abused.
We have only private spaces that people try, out of the goodwill of their heart to say, okay, fine. I want to help.
Okay.
Even when we get, cases sometimes, we call each other and find, okay, so where can we take somebody? And sometimes some of us host others in the house.
Wow.
But for how long?
For how long? And that's not a
that is not going to help the child in Mandera. It's not going to help the child in Tana River.
Yes.
We need to have structures everywhere.
But if I can just add something, let's make it very practical. You asked, but we have so many hotlines. A 5-year-old, does she have access to a telephone? If she's lucky enough and stays in Nairobi, yes. Does she know this number to call? Most likely not.
No.
So the institutions that we have not made it a conducive environment for our children to report. Number 2,
that includes the schools?
The schools, because sometimes the violations, in fact, are happening in the schools. And that is why Florence is saying, can we have someone who is not part of the school system, but coming in every so often to break that silence in terms of how it's, in terms of allowing these children a safe space to talk. So you find that, yes, we have the hotlines, but the hotlines they're not an end to itself. So even if this child reports, you find that the child will report, but the number of days that we will take to extract this child from that unconducive environment, by the time we're taking this child to court, by the time we're making this child testify against the stepfather, it's 7 years down the line. What have you done? You have extracted the child from their community, you have isolated them, you have re-traumatized them most instances by making them recount the story several times in court. They have perhaps missed so many days in school because every time you go to court, you're missing school. So the environment that we have is not conducive to allow the children to break the silence. It's not attractive for the child to be, to talk about it, because she thinks in the long term, what am I doing? I am pitting my father against the rest of the community.
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
And therefore I'm the one who is on the wrong. So let me just keep quiet, and then hopefully this will go away.
So if I may ask, is this child safe right now? Did she go back home to the same family?
She's not safe. And the reason we then decided as an organization to call others like-minded organization is because we can't do it by ourselves. As Equality Now, the most we can do is now tell you this is what is happening. Because we realize every time we look at statistics, or people say these are the numbers, but nobody goes to question the voices behind the numbers. But even these ones are not even among the numbers because this one's never reported. So the more the silence out there is so much, this child is still at home. We have a long holiday. We don't know what is going to happen to them. Hence, we are saying Kenyans, we need to stop, talk to your religious leader. Let them be discussing this on the pulpit. Have safe environments within the church. Let's have safe environments within schools. Talk to your MCA. Are they pushing for a budget line for structures within your county? This is a responsibility for each and every one of us. What we can do as an organization is raise it up here. Come here and have this discussion. Put them on the billboards. Hold a national dialogue. But beyond that, each one of us is responsible for that child staying where she is. Yes.
All right. So we'll take a short commercial break, but we're coming back to continue with this conversation.